Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how women can step into their power? Well, we got a gal that's been stepping. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I am Ryan Morris, and as always, I am here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and do that right now. And then go to our Facebook page, or group, rather, and join a tribe of giants on Facebook. That is a tribe of giants. There is 3,600 members, highly engaged, excited, waiting to meet you. So go do that. Join now.
Join now. Do it.
Why not? It'd be fun. Nick, what other housekeeping items do we have before we launch?
Well, I was paying attention so well that I don't even know what you just said. I was looking at Abigail's bio.
YouTube check, Facebook check.
Yeah. We have the event on the 28th coming up.
Yes.
The mastermind class. It's for teachers and parents. It's going to be powerful. $19.95 to attend. 2-hour course taught by 8 of the 9 League of Giant members. So if you're not signed up for that, get signed up. It's filling up fast. That's going to be an incredible event. Also on the 26th, we're heading to St. George, Utah to teach 300 special ed teachers about the Giants and the Smalls. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is a pretty cool deal. We'll post stuff inside the tribe, and it's always neat when we get to go and teach teachers and kids, and it's a special experience. So we'll share that with you.
We kind of like it.
Yeah.
Well, good. Should we introduce our guest?
Well, okay.
Maybe. She's a powerhouse. Abigail Olaya. She's the CEO of Olaya Events Company, a collection of wedding venues and a catering company based in Phoenix, Arizona. She and her husband started the venue at the Grove in 2009 with a $15,000 loan and grew it into an award-winning multi-million-dollar business. I think that's pretty incredible. That's like a mustard seed of money turned into millions of dollars. Throughout Olaya Events and Company's tenure, it has taken on managing Audubon Arizona Event Center and created its own catering company, Ensemble Catering. And so, Abigail, help me know if I'm doing all right with this. Is this sounding okay so far?
Yeah, you're doing great.
Yeah. She's also the CEO of Abigail Olaya Coaching, where she gets to leverage her leadership, expertise, and years of experience leading, training, coaching, and developing her staff to a broader audience. Abigail has a passion for helping women access and step into their power in extraordinary ways so they can live extraordinary lives. So she's been recognized as one of the top 40 under 40 leaders by the Phoenix Business Journal for her leadership and impact within the community. And even more than any of those things, she loves to travel with her husband and their triplets, 7-year-old girls, Audrey, Ava, and is it Adelina or Adelina?
Adelina.
And in 2021, they're excited and on a mission to see the country in a 5-month adventure going coast to coast in an RV. I'm sorry about that part.
We're both in that industry.
Yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, we're actually finishing up our 5-month trip. So we've got less than 2 weeks left and we'll be back in Arizona.
Amazing.
It's been quite an adventure. So a lot of lessons learned and experiences that are going to be very memorable.
I bet. We were trying to decide what RV stands for, like ridiculous vehicle, ruined vacation.
Yeah, ruined vacation.
Something.
Nope, all recreation.
Recreation, good. Oh yeah, there's that part, recreation.
Yes.
Yeah, well, good. So let's dive into your story. You ready to share your philosophies of life and your adventure?
Yeah, where do you want to start?
All the way back in time, back to childhood. What was it like growing up for you? Because here's why, as we preface this, is that everybody starts different. And so I don't know that matters where you start. It matters where you go. So does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Arizona in a small town called Levine, and I'm the oldest of three. So I have two younger brothers.
You're the oldest of the town of Levine. Like it was just your family.
No, there was a few more people there.
Yeah.
But it was basically farm country. Our family didn't have a farm.
Yeah.
And is there an echo? Because I'm hearing an echo. Sorry about that.
I'll mute out.
Oh, okay. And so, yeah, so just the oldest of two brothers, and went to a small school, and really found a passion for math and science. And that's because my dad was very big on those. So I was an A student, and it was like, okay, it's great if you do well in all the other courses or subjects, but he was really focused on math and science. And that really set me up. It was a really good foundation. I didn't know it at the time, but it led me into male dominated careers. And I was very strong in the science arena. And so just with that, I never saw myself as somebody different, as like female or male, or it was just like, this is how we were, and that's how I worked. And I was able to rise the ranks and help other women along the path to be able to establish their careers and to be successful. And then when it came, I had a really great position at APS, which is a utility company, a large utility company in Arizona. And when it came time to, when I was going to have the triplets, when we found out, it was like, okay, how am I going to be running? Because we were about 4 years into our business at that time. And so how was I going to be running the business? How was I going to be doing my full management job and then having these three littles around? And so that's when it came time to leave corporate. And it was, it reminded me of the Tony Robbins quote of, if you want to take the island, burn all the boats. And that was literally how monumental it felt to go and give my resignation with these 8-week babies that, were totally dependent on me. And it was like, okay, I'm leaving security of income, leaving these amazing benefits, leaving a job that I actually love, and just betting all on us and our entrepreneurship at that time, all in. I mean, we had been pretty successful, but now it was like real.
Okay, I want to dive into that because I think this is very fitting, very timely. I'm in a similar point in my life, and so if you're good going off track on that, I do want to talk about kind of that transition from corporate world into your own thing. And so, can you talk? I want to go really dive into the emotions of that decision and how that came about. I mean, it's a beauty to be able to explore the journey from childhood to there. I mean, it's amazing that you went from like at 9 years old, went into your own business. That's what it sounds like.
I wish it was that
by the time I was 9 years old, I was running I was CEO of a corporation.
Yeah, big gap I skipped over.
But the beauty is that you made this jump. Not even I don't know. Let's talk about that. Was it a jump? Was it a bridge? How did you go? Because you talked about burning the boats. So going through the emotion of that decision and really diving into it, can you venture into that a little bit?
Yeah. So when we started out, we always had this like vision. Like I had this vision that we were going to create something of our own. And before we even created it, we were trying to do, because we came from engineering backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so it was like trying to come up with some product we could manufacture and people would love, like the little plastic light clips that you hang Christmas lights up, right? It was like, how ingenious with that, and people love it and they need it. And so we just couldn't come up with that. And we finally came to where we made a list of what we were good at and what we enjoyed doing. And we worked through that, and we really enjoyed hosting people and creating experiences. And then I had project management, strong background and things like that. So when it came time to actually leave corporate, it was like always this idea that it was going to come, but never set a date, never like saw when that was. And it was literally like, I'm like, what if I had one child? What would I have done? Like, would I have tried to do all three? I don't know. Like, I mean, that wasn't the path, but it was literally like a changing point. And that was the emotions around that were so huge, because like I said, it was the leaving the security and the comfort, right? Like that paycheck was coming, and it was a good one every 2 weeks, like.
Yeah. Well, the idea of security and comfort, I was talking to Justin Middleton the other day, and he was talking about the corporate world, and he was in the pawn industry, pawn shops, absolutely loved it. But every day of his life, he was in fight or flight. He was constantly worried about doing the wrong thing, hurting somebody, letting his guard down. And so we say security in our jobs, And yet many of us go to work feeling that constant state of fight or flight.
Yeah, I didn't quite have that. I loved what I was doing.
Okay.
I was managing a team, and that's the thing, is that if I had to return to corporate, I would no longer be doing that, right? Like, because there was this vision of like where I wanted to be available and present to my kids, like taking them to school, picking them up, being available. And that was always the goal of why we went into entrepreneurship. So that was a tough thing. It was more the security of like the income and the lifestyle that we had created, right? And and the benefits were just phenomenal. And now we pay our own medical insurance and things. And it's a different price point, but
quite a bit more, huh?
And it did play with the mind, because I was successful, and there was so much identity wrapped in my corporate. So it was like to leave corporate and then go to like, now I'm saying I'm an entrepreneur. There was a lot of like mind stuff played there that was lesser. That wasn't, this was, oh gosh, almost 8 years ago. So entrepreneurship did have a different tone at that time, like it was like, oh, you're going to go do something, it just wasn't that kind of big thing that you were doing or you're stepping out into. And we would drive by like on the freeway, and I'm like, oh, look, it's like a more rundown kind of area of town. And I'm like, look at the apartments there, only $500 a month. We will never be on the street. And he's like, what are you talking about? Like it was just like my mind jumped to what is the most catastrophic, what would be the worst thing,
wow.
for us, and I had to work through that. But it's all mind games.
Yeah. Here's an interesting thought. We'll go down a rabbit hole a little bit on this one. 8 years ago, you jumped into this business.
Well, we were already in 4. Sorry.
You what?
We were in 4. It was 8 that I left corporate.
Okay. 8 that you left corporate. So you were already doing it for 4. And then at 8 years, you left corporate. And how long ago was that?
What part?
Oh, the 8 years since you left. I guess I'm lost on it.
So 12, we started in 2009. That's when we started the business. And then 4 years in, I left corporate.
Okay.
So 8 years ago, I left corporate, because the girls are almost 8. So
so that's what I want to talk about right there. I think we're on the same track there. But they say every 7 years, you replace every cell in your body. Every cell. And so the person that you are today, compared to the person that you were then, would you say that they're the same people, or are they different?
Yeah, totally different.
Yeah.
Like I can recognize her, but it's such a different version. Even the person I was 6 months ago before doing this RV trip, that was 5, but still, it's just a different version. And it's kind of, I don't know, maybe similar to looking back at childhood, and it's like, I kind of remember childhood, but it's just like a faint memory. And I'm very grateful for all the versions I've been along the way. And I can honor that, because she got me here. Right. And where I'm going, I've got to be able to up level to get to where I want.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a gentleman the other day who was, I think he was 85 years old. And he said, up until about 75, he was active. They were doing all the things they'd always done. And we talked about this briefly, the idea that who he was 7 years before that or 20 years before that is totally different people every time. And so we continually evolve. And so what's interesting is the person that you are today won't be the person that you are 7 years from now, unless you continue to choose those same behaviors. And so you made a choice to jump into the corporate world, and now your body has evolved with you. Your mind has evolved with you. And now Abigail Olaya, as we know her, isn't Abigail Olaya that somebody would have known 10 years ago.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's crazy.
It's kind of crazy thought, right?
It is.
your body literally evolves with you as you change. And so it supports you so that new version of you is anchored in, because you have all new cells, all new memories, all new programming, but it's anchored in under the new stuff. There's memories, right? Yeah. What comes up as you hear that?
Well, I find that really interesting. I had never thought about it as the cells replacing. I had only thought about it as like a mental evolution. And so that's really a cool aspect to, I think, supporting the growth and the different version, right? Like it's literally a whole different version of a person.
Was it easy for you? You just decided, I'm going to go do my own business, and all of a sudden, here you are in your multi-million-dollar company, top 40 under 40. Like there was no challenge.
Oh, there were definitely challenges.
Okay. Yeah.
They look little now looking back, right?
That was my
hindsight.
passive aggressive way of being like, yeah, tell me about
Yeah.
the challenges.
Isn't
Yeah,
that interesting though? Like when you're going through stuff, it
Yeah.
seems sometimes they seem like the biggest hurdles in the world. But as you stretch and grow through them, then you look back and you're like, well, what? Like that's
Yeah.
nothing now. That's not even a speed bump anymore.
Yeah, like what can you do with $15,000 now? It was like, how did we make it, right? We were so resourceful. But we had he wanted 1.4 million for the property.
Huh.
And so we drove by the property and there was a big for sale sign. It wasn't commercial, it was like a homemade one. We called the gentleman and he lived 2 hours away in a different city. And so we were like, hey, we were in our late 20s. He was like, hey, don't waste my time. It's 1.4 million, basically, and we didn't have anything close to that. Like we didn't come from trust funds or I don't know, whatever else is out there.
Yeah.
And so that was a challenge in itself. And on top of that, he wanted to completely sell the property, not to do any renting or leasing of the property. And we were able to talk him into leasing it to us. And then, another challenge is, okay, he wanted $6,000 a month. Well, 15 grand isn't going to go very far. And that was after a lot of bank rejection that we got a loan from Edward's mom. And so, there was a lot of challenges in all of that. And then
she's still loaning.
Yeah, I don't know. I can ask. It might be a higher interest rate now.
Oh yeah, there's the family rate, and then there's the friends, and then there's us.
Yeah. So, and then when we went to purchase, I mean, we were 3.5 years in when we were like, oh my gosh, if he sells this property, we've built the entire business, and our business was dependent because it was venue at the Grove, and it's acres of pecan grove trees. So you kind of need the Grove to be able to host the weddings in the Grove. And we were like, if he ever decides to sell this, or, because we were just on a leasing basis, we would lose the business. And so it was at a turning point of like, what are we going to do? And he still wanted that value. And this was back in 2000. By the time we came to an agreement, it was 2013. But, the market was different than when it was at a high prior to 2008. And so we had to get centered and be able to be willing. And we had to get to that place where after blood, sweat, tears, everything we'd built up, that we were willing to walk away if he couldn't come down to the price point of what the property was valued at, and leave the business. And so, I mean, there's another challenge,
Yeah. What a lesson. I mean, you say challenge, but I hear a lesson in that. Get centered and be willing to walk away. I mean, there have been many times in this business where we've had opportunities to grow, and if it didn't go that way, we would be willing to walk away from it, and it would be okay. We would be okay either way. Mm-hmm. And so, getting into that space where you're centered—that's the centering, is being okay with whatever comes.
I relate so much to this too, because of I owned my own business as well. Didn't foresee we had signed a lease and then had a 5-year extension. We had the first right of refusal. But she could change numbers, like the landlady could change the numbers. She could raise the rent. She could do whatever she wanted to do, but we had first right of refusal. Well, 4 3/4 of the way into that 5-year lease, then coming up on that renewal period, she decided to raise the rent fairly substantially, and realized we just built a business on this and didn't even see this coming, right? Mm-hmm. And so we had to do the same thing. We had to decide, okay, well, do we stick to our guns? Do we walk away? And we walked away and trusted that, it went the other way for me, instead now all of a sudden, no business, but now look where I'm at now. And so I can see the stepping into it and just stepping into your power and using that experience and saying, okay, I'm going to trust whatever is supposed to happen right now. I love that, because yes, I would love to be in the same business that I was doing before and everything was all hunky-dory and all this stuff, right? But looking backwards now, I wouldn't change it for the world. Yeah. I love where I'm at, and it's right where I'm supposed to be.
I love that.
And,
yes.
And and for you guys as well, obviously it worked out because you're in business in the Grove still, right?
Yeah.
Everything worked out.
Yeah. Well, COVID threw a wrench. I mean, there's a challenge, but I think we all had our wrenches, right? But yes, we are still in business there.
Hang on to that wrench, because I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about growing the business. So as you're growing the business, did you hang up a sign and then all these people just started flooding in? Like it was automatically an instant success?
No.
Tell me about the work. Yeah.
Well, people book weddings 18 to 24 months out, right? So like, I mean, you can maybe get a few like on the year time frame, but you're talking just different pieces of the market at that point and what you're willing to take on. So the nice thing about that business is it wasn't so much like having to go out and do cold calling, because once people get engaged, they need a venue to be able to plan the celebration.
Yeah.
So that was an ease of an entry point for us, and we were able to start hitting the ground at bridal shows. We took our own furniture from our house to create a.
Did you really?
Yeah. We were resourceful at 15,000. You know, we even negotiated down the rent and brought in another tenant to rent out the catering kitchen portion of that. And then they fell out 10 months or so into it. And then we took on their portion of rent because we'd built up enough business. We also, what I think also lent to like our success, even to today, is the way we structured our payments. So a lot of times in the industry, it's like lump sums at certain points in time. And we needed cash flow. So it was like, here's your initial payment of a couple grand, and then it's divided into monthly payments. So we have like a consistent cash flow. Even to this day, that model has served us. And of course, you have to be diligent in planning and saving it because you're collecting it up front. It led to us being able to have that turning in the beginning. And so like just thinking back on like when you're asking about that version or who was that, it was like, wow, I'm so glad that she made that decision. You know, like that really lent to
right.
for her.
This is what came up for me as you're saying that. I'm like, she crafty.
Determined.
Yeah, she's determined. So you keep hitting on resourcefulness, right? Using the resources you have to create what you can. And Ryan and I have bootstrapped this thing, and now we have the League of Giants, and in a way, we're still bootstrapping it. But we're getting resourceful. We're trying to find all these ways to build it. There will be a point where we don't have to do that anymore. We'll have access to more resources to do more. But the idea of being resourceful with what you have. I mean, you're taking your furniture from your home and you're taking it to the events. You're getting creative around how to structure the payments so that you can have cash flow. I think we often think from the space of why we can't. Well, I don't have the resources, so I can't do it. But you're saying take what you do have and work with that.
Yeah.
A lot of these books, you know, they started out with just, you know, finding resources online, YouTube channels that I could watch, because I could pay for a YouTube channel. They're pretty affordable, honestly. And then from there, they give you tips and you go look at those websites and you learn those websites and you just start to build with the resources you have. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Speak to what part? Just getting
about the resourcefulness. Yeah.
I mean, it was super, like we had to go and look for the person that knew somebody that could help us with graphic design, right? Like now you can create your own website in minutes. That wasn't the case in 2009. You needed a graphic designer or somebody that knew it for like mowing the lawn. So it was a couple acres of grass, and we went to Craigslist and bought like a $350 used lawnmower that you could ride to cut the grass, right? Like, well, I was at corporate. My husband was there fixing up the property, and he'd be on the lawnmower and taking calls like, venue at the Grove. They're like, I want to come in for a tour. He's like, okay. So he's in the bathroom cleaning up, put the lawnmower away.
He's got grass clippings in his hair. His hands are all green. You're going to love it. She's in a bright white dress, green hands. It's perfect.
Well, no, this is a tour. So.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But even like,
I'm jumping ahead.
What I hear. Yeah, this is what I hear even today with people is they're like, they see the next app or the next program, right? They're like, oh, I have to have this. We like drew our layouts, I think, in Word for I don't know how many years. Like we still to this day, kind of like, I don't know, do I put this out? We still use Excel for our proposals. Like that is like pretty, you don't need sophisticated things to be able to get by, right? And to be able to be running, you just need the systems in place. And that's what I tell people is like, focus on the system. Don't go out and buy this expensive program or whatever looks like out there. Like get what you're working with first And once that's working, now you have availability and that I saw that because I managed an IT project portfolio at APS, and that was what everybody wanted, this budgeting and these funding for these projects, but they didn't flesh out the requirements. So then we would go and get this like expensive program, get it in, and it's like, oh, it doesn't meet what we need it to do.
Yeah, that's the crazy part, is there's all this stuff that bells and whistles, it looks great. Mm-hmm. And then you go implement it and you're like, this does nothing of what I need. We had a case the other day where I wanted to send out emails, and now we're trying to still figure it out. But one of the programs looks phenomenal on the outside. It's really easy to use. And then you go to plug into it and it doesn't work. Mm. And so, but I have one that I've been using for years that you plug it in, you can count on it. So it's like, it's clunky. It's a little more archaic, but it works. Yeah. And so, man, the newest and the greatest, right? The idea of the newest and the greatest. If I only had that, then I could be successful and operating from that space versus, I'm going to go buy a $350 Craigslist riding lawnmower and mow it myself. Right. Yeah. I love what, Steve Hardison said. Go ahead with your thought and then we'll bring that up.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, even resourcefulness on like time, right? Like it was just how can we like manage everything, and also resourcefulness in like the ideas, like the payment creation. So like when couples would contact me, they're like, I want to do XYZ with their payments and stuff. I'm like, okay, well, let me talk to accounting. I'm accounting.
Give me a minute. Okay. Hi, I'm Abigail from accounting. I'll be right with you.
But I was able to create spaces where living into what I was creating, right? Coming from that place that one day there would be accounting. I wasn't going to be doing, it was never the intention to create something where I had to open the door and be showing up for me to be running the entire operation, right? So like that would be creating a job, and I could just go get a paycheck for a lot less headache somewhere for that, right? So
I picture this, like somebody comes in, hi, I'm Abigail, I'm the CEO of this company, and then they go home, and then you call and you say, hey, this is Abigail, I'm with accounting. And then you go home, hey, this is Abigail in customer service. Like it's all you, until there's a point that it's not all you. Right. Yeah. You were resourceful enough. Steve said earlier, he said, you spin more plates than most people can hold. Like you're the distinction of resourcefulness, the distinction resourcefulness. And it's true. I see that in what you're talking about here is even going back to the beginning. I could imagine that there's this pathway that shows up through the whole thing, this thread that shows up from what your parents taught you to today of being resourceful. And really looking at what it would take, and your husband too. I mean, it sounds like you both worked really well together to create this.
Yeah. And that's interesting you say, even like parents teaching, because I never really like thought all the way through that thread. But I mean, I grew up with like, if the car needed fixing, my dad was reading the manual that we bought at Checkers or whatever, AutoZone, right? It was we spent time in Home Depot as kids, like. We had summer projects of like doing, I don't know, there was just a lot of doing. And so I can see how that plays. And then my husband too, I can see where his comes from, his family. I mean, his family's in Colombia, and his mother came to the States. And so she's extremely resourceful too, and like making dollars stretch. And so. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm having this thought that's coming up around this throwaway society. We live kind of in a throwaway society. You grab an app, it doesn't work, you grab another one. It's that easy, right? A job doesn't work out, you go grab another job. It's like you can just replace things. Mm-hmm. And when you really commit to something like you did, this vision, this dream that you had, you were all in. There was no throwing it away. It was just this distinction of I'm in it, I'm all in. Mm-hmm. Kind of like what Chris Doors talks about. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, and the real all in came with leaving corporate. That was burning the boats. I mean, if it absolutely went south downhill, I could go get another corporate job. But that was the teetering point of, like I said, I would just look at, like, oh, how are we not going to be on the street? And it was just craziness that was coming up for that. So,
yesterday I was driving with my daughter and we drove downtown Salt Lake, and there's a tent city. And I almost said I'm in tent city. I don't know. There's a joke in that, but the idea there is that there's a tent city in Salt Lake. Worst case, I could live in a tent city if things got really bad. I don't ever want to be there, but the reality is that I will find a way. You know, all of us find a way to keep going. It might not look like our ideal, but we can be really resourceful when we need to be. And so the idea that you can lose everything, you might lose what you have. It might look different, right?
Yeah. But there's enough here, like you're talking about, you'll get back up.
Yeah, you'll get back up. You'll rebuild it quickly, and you'll get back to where you were. And it might feel a little uncomfortable as you transition. And so I can imagine leaving that corporate job, that quote unquote security, felt really uncomfortable. And I don't know. I love the idea of the chrysalis, you know, the caterpillar and the chrysalis, the idea that it goes in there and it turns to mush. And I can only imagine how uncomfortable that might be, not knowing what's on the other side and coming out a butterfly. And here you're going through a similar thing over an 8-year process. Every one of your cells was replaced, nearly every one. And in a way, you're going into the chrysalis, and whatever you're doing in that 7-year period becomes the new you, the new butterfly, basically. Yeah. And now who you are today isn't going to be who you are 7 years from now. It's going to be totally different.
Yeah. And even playing on that example that you gave, like, you know, for when the butterfly emerges, it has to go through that struggle to come out for the wings to be pumped with the blood or whatever. And so if you cut it, have you heard the story where the little boy cut?
No, go ahead.
So it was like something along, a little boy cut the sac or to allow the butterfly to come out. And because it didn't go through that struggle to emerge, to like get the blood through the wings to be able to fly, it basically just like would have been on the ground and die. And so thinking about like even those 7 years that you're talking about of every cell replacing, and like what challenges or struggles are we all encountering in life during that time? And that's what lends to, right, the full emerging at the end too. To being able to overcome. So I love that.
Don't discount the struggle. I mean, it can feel really uncomfortable. Even the projection of the struggle, the possibility of the struggle, sometimes we'll avoid that, but it's through that struggle that you come out even better and better. You keep emerging into better versions of yourself. And so, I love the philosophy of this, because you took basically $15,000 nowadays. Like, seriously, it's not a ton of money. It goes fast. It might seem like a lot of money to some people. If they had that, that would change their world. At the same time, it's not. When you're building a multi-million-dollar business, which maybe, I don't know if you had the vision of it being a multi-million-dollar business when you began, or if it emerged into that.
I had the vision of like something big, and like what big was at that time, I don't know. Like there wasn't like a real dollar amount, and it was more of like creating that flexibility and that freedom for myself, and that lifestyle that I was ultimately after. That was the real vision. And
it emerged into this company that's thriving. But the vision that you held on to was the lifestyle. Of, why am I doing this? Because I want to be free. I want to be with my kids. I want to be able to travel, do these things. And how amazing that was enough of a vision to create everything that you have in your life right now. Because what you needed for your life to live that vision is there right now, all of it. And so, but you didn't have the vision of all those things. You didn't have the how to. What you had was the vision of what you wanted. And perhaps for somebody, $1 million is that thing, but that seems more like a how to. Well, if I had $1 million, then I could do all these things. Well, that would be a pathway in trying to determine the how to of creating your life, but you didn't have that. Are you following me on that? Is that?
Yeah. I wasn't concerned about the how. I mean, of course, it is just like looking at the next piece, right? Just like building along the way. And also, oh gosh, there was a thought that came in my mind, and now it just popped out.
Look left to right and see if that. I heard that.
Where is it?
Yeah. So we were talking about the pieces, and sometimes you don't know the how to. You know the very next piece.
Oh, right? That's what it was. So so it didn't. I had the lifestyle of what we were going for, and I think it was so critical because it went into it as something that I love doing, that we love doing, right? And so it was like. It just, there was already that fulfillment and joy in it, that it kept filling the cup along the way. So it wasn't about the money. It wasn't about because it never really is, right? And when we make it about at least that's what I believe. And when we make it about that, then that's where we start. That's where we start falling and pulling back. And And then because it's not enough to hold us or sustain us through those times, through those challenges. So I think it was those two components of like, somehow we got it right in the beginning of knowing what to go into because we enjoyed it. And then also having that vision to more of a place to come from than to get to, right?
Yeah. Wow. That needs to be written right there. Come from somewhere rather than get to somewhere. Does that make sense? I love that you're saying that, because to me that says how you operate, what you're operating from is more important than where you're going.
Yeah.
I got to write that down. So I'll do that real quick here.
You know, on the universal it'll only come in and support every time. So no matter what you plant, you know, you could plant seeds of doubt, seeds of worry, fear, all these other things, and then guess what you'll get? Those same things. You know, you guys went in it with hope and vision and excitement and love, and you know, with this idea of this is what we're planning. We're planting our future lifestyle that we want. And so what did it get you? Your future lifestyle, because you just kept working that, and the universe will come in and support, just like a garden. If you plant corn, you're going to get corn. Earl Nightingale says if you plant nightshade, you'll get nightshade, which is a deadly poison. You plant corn, you'll get corn in equal abundance. And so that's a pretty powerful. It's very simple, and there's a lot more to it as you're going along the day to day in business. There's probably days where you're like, you know, hands in your face, head down, maybe some tears, you know, some hard things that come along inside of that business. But as you're going through those things, you're growing and stretching and becoming the person that needs to be the person you need to be to get the lifestyle that you want.
I hear it even more than becoming. Like Abigail was being this thing. She was being it. And as you're being that, like when you say where you're coming from, right? That's what I hear in that, is who you're being as you create, because you have the vision, and who you be kind of impacts how that vision turns out. Because if you're being the person that is all about the money, you're going to come at it as the person that is all about the money. If you're being from the space of serving somebody on the other side of you, your business is going to grow in that way. And I would imagine you just got referral after referral after referral because of the way you were being.
Yeah, I don't know so much referral, but definitely on like a presence within the community. I mean, we rose up and we still have quite a significant presence as to what we offer and what they'll come for, right? And it's so interesting because back then I didn't even have the distinction of being versus becoming or coming, right? It was just like looking back, I can see that that's how that played out. And that's the cool thing to like, and so it wasn't like I intentionally went in like, this is how I'm going to be. It hadn't learned that aspect yet of it, of things, but it's cool to see and to be like, wow, it worked when you didn't know it was working. It was working, right? Like that nightshade or the whatever else you're planting in the garden, like the soil doesn't care. It's what you tend to. And so,
and as I was going through business and there was times that I wasn't being that person. But there's a lesson inside of that, is how quickly can you shift to then get back on track and say, okay, wait a second, what did I learn there from that failure, that mistake? I saw a post on this the other day, and Hugh and I commented back and forth a little bit on this, but about your failures and versus mastering something. And you've learned to be a master inside of your business. And, you know, in project management, in time, in finances, in graphic design, and in all these different things, and being a mom, right? Spinning all these plates. There's times you might have dropped a plate or two along the way and then went, oh, crap. Okay, that didn't work. Where's the lesson? And who do I need to be? Okay, start being that, fix that plate and respin it. And then now you know what not to do the next time.
Yeah.
And then
I've got a lot of wobbly plates. They're broken, and I glued them back together wrong. They're like,
they're still spinning.
Yeah, I mean, there's a time where, like, even in the very beginning, like I'll never forget this. And we had a bride that had come in, and they were less than nice, let's put it that way. And so they had a great event, they went on their way, and there was a bridesmaid that called up sometime after, and she's like, I left my charger. And this was like one of our very first ones. But the way that was handled, and like it just was they're so rude that I fought back for $3.50. Like, in order for you to get this charger, you got to give me a check for $3.50. And it was like one of the dumbest things that I've ever done. But it was like such a big lesson in like, wow, I'll remember that. And I went over for who I would have really been to like be right, or to be a point, right? It's not that the customer's right. It's like, how do I want to handle the situation kind of thing. Wow. And so there's lots of lessons in that. I mean, one time the Grove, we had somebody else contracted to manage an event, and they sent the bride down 2 inches of water down the aisle, and the guests. Because we're flood irrigated. So it could have been moved to a different section of the property, but that call just wasn't made. And so, you know, at the end of the day, I can't be like, oh, we subcontracted it out. Like, I have to own that. And then we came in and we were like, what? They were prepared to fight. They had a binder. They had all this legal stuff. They were ready. And we were like, well, you know, because we had already made the decision, like, what is the right thing to do? And we do have set values in the company that we come from. And it's so powerful to come from like a value set system. And I remember when we were in the beginning and in our first like business class that we had enrolled in, we were like, respect, you know, like this, like the typical corporate integrity, like, and we got pushback on that. And it was like, no, I think you have more work. She challenged. And I was like, I don't know what she wants then, you know, kind of thing. And now our values are like, we work hard, play hard. Right.
Yeah, I saw that on your events
wow
page.
Factors. Yeah. So
beautiful.
We honor our word. I mean, to have those kinds of things that now our team members get to live into, and to know exactly where we're coming from, we don't have to have a manual of 1,000 pages of what to do. It's like, come from here, and if there's a better decision that could have been made, we'll evaluate that afterwards, and then we'll course correct. And so that's kind of like the whole premise of like where we operate the business from is, and again, how we set this up without knowing it, I don't know, but
how did that change your business then? Like as far as like the employment, like the employees that work for you, morale, things like that. What did that do for your
night
company?
Night and day. The minute that we came and we put the values in, that we really worked, and we probably created about 80% of it. And we have a purpose too. We create extraordinary experiences. And so it was something that we could latch on, and that's really where it came from. And so once we did that, we had fallout within the team. And the minute that they left, we saw for the first time that other team members were like, oh, that's like a bag lifted from my head, because that was such an energy drain. Having someone, they were competent, they were good at their job, but culturally they were
misaligned, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a book, Good to Great, and that talks about getting the right people on the bus, and it might be a little antiquated or outdated, but the general premise is still true, because one negative energy or one bad apple that's not doing that it's going to just weigh down and drain, and getting the right people on the bus is life-changing us. And that could be getting the management team or the owners, to be doing that.
Yeah, it takes only 3%.
Step out. Sometimes the owners are in the way of alignment because of their values. The company has them and the owner doesn't. And so like creating it in a way that honors the owner's owning of the company, but creates that purpose, that value, that place to come from. So
so now they know where to come from a company standpoint, right? Like I'll bet on someone any day, if they're a cultural fit, I can teach how to like run up an event.
Yes.
Right? I can teach
I love
the basic skills.
So I'm hearing this pattern. I love looking for patterns and systems in this. Is that you had one of the guests here said instinct. You had instinct before you had knowledge, and so you just did this without even knowing what you were doing. So you didn't know you were being, but you were being. So you had a way of being. So your place that you came from was from that being. And so I do want to dive into how you take care of your being. But before we do that, I want to just highlight as well that you were resourceful with whatever you had. And that from your value system, when you created that with other people and they co-created that with you, they took ownership in it. And then it became a case of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
There were some that were misaligned and those that were aligned. And those that are aligned are easy to teach because they buy into the values. So it's an easy thing.
Mm-hmm.
And those that are misaligned don't buy into the values. So it's always a challenge. And so that whole resistance to change may not be a problem with the product or the system. It might be a misalignment with values.
Yeah. And they stand out very quickly. You know, even as much due diligence as we do for hiring, you could still get somebody that once they're in the door are a mismatch. And then you got to take the courage to be able to correct that. And take care of it, however, which is what would be right for them and for the company, right? Like, it's not just it's like, no, we have a responsibility in that too.
Right.
It's a dual thing. So.
Yeah, you have a responsibility. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That the courage to correct. If you've made a decision that's misaligned, you can clean that up.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned from Brandon Craig years ago. That was a powerful lesson from him is that you can clean almost anything up if you're willing to go in and do that. And so having that courage, because it might be really scary, having the courage to do that, feeling that fear and doing it still, correcting it anyway, that's courage, because you can't have courage without the fear, I think.
Yeah.
And so you're really stepping into it with the fear coming along.
There's a line of a song. It's and in fact, I was going to send it to you. It's called "Fearless" by the Goo Goo Dolls. And so I saw your giant playlist the other day. I'll still send it to you. But the first line is, "Behind every fear is a lie told." And oh my God, I just love that quote. Behind every fear is a lie told, because when we really look at it, I mean, you have to have that fear. You have to be able to go over it. But what's the story? What's the lie? What are we telling ourselves that's holding ourselves back from that, right? And so it's just like, I think that's such a powerful way to, ever since I found that, it's been recent, but it's just like, okay, where can I, it gives me more access to find where the thing is that I need to change to be able to step into.
I think, the idea of the topic here, how women can step into their power, of what you're teaching as you coach is to really align themselves with who they want to be. And a lot of people don't know who they want to be. They're being everything outside of them because they think that's what they need to be. But you chose to be something, and you've got to protect that, nourish it, and build it. And so I want to dive into that a little bit, because that is where it all starts. Who you are being is going to show up in your world in every way. And so if your being is out of alignment, your world's going to be out of alignment. And so as soon as you can step into that, I'd want to know from you, Abigail, is like, how do you take care of your being so that you can stay in alignment with who you say you are?
Oh gosh, that's a big question. Well, I think really how I take care of it now is I'm more in tune with when I think things are out of a line. Like catch that. Where's that energy? There's a leak somewhere. What is that? And being attuned to that, and then looking for and correct and having the courage to take that and step into it. Right. And so thinking about like who she was that started this and rose to top in corporate. I was a driver. I had skills. I was known in the business arena of here's business Abigail, because the meeting would start. There was no chit chat with me. It was like, let's go. We're going to start and end. And that's where I think, like, for me personally, I had stepped into, I was good at that, and I lived that, and that's no longer the where I want to come from. And really, my power is in being centered, being attuned to, like, what do I like, what do I not like, where is this, and as long as I can keep that clean and keep cleaning it up along the way, then that's where I'm really accessing the true power. And when you said, like, a lot of women don't know it, they don't, because it's like, you need to be this way to be in whatever environment. You need to show up like this, right? And then I hear a lot of times that, like, I'm so good at helping other people, but I don't know what I want. I don't know how to help myself. It's like, no, it's there. We just have to find it, right? We got to pull that out and bring that in. And when you can tap into that, that's where the true power comes from.
Yeah, the loss of power, the disempowerment comes from trying to be something that you're not. And you can only pretend that for so long. And there's a leak in that. There's a pretty big leak. And so empowerment comes when you truly own who you are, that perception of who you are. And it is powerful, but some people don't see themselves that way.
And the perception of yourself from yourself, right? So like I had lived so concerned with judgment for so long. And that's like what, if I could free every woman from like, who cares? you do, you know, that's where the power is, like and you know, not that it doesn't surface it. Yeah, of course it surfaces, but it's like how do we just like be comfortable and be with ourselves. And that's the true perception that is important.
Yeah. So, man, those judgments, Debbie Roth is one of my favorites when it comes to judgment and forgiveness work, because it really is just, letting go of that judgments that we hold of ourselves and others. I'm doing a course right now with Townsend Wardlaw, who's got a powerful course for men. And one of the things that we're doing is we're writing down every unuseful thought that we have, writing them down, not doing anything with them, just bringing them to the surface, like weeding the garden, not even weeding at this point, just looking at the weeds and noticing they're there. And my God, dude, if you could read my thoughts, people would stop following me this instant.
You probably get more followers, you know, because then they go, oh, I have
this
that.
list is like, oh God, that's Nick Smith.
That's authentic right there.
Yeah. It's unreal. The thoughts are there. We all have thoughts. It's not the thoughts. It's the attention to the thoughts. It's the action around the thoughts. So if I start to feel like I'm these things and I start to give attention to those things and I start to act on those things and they become my reality. And so it's not the thoughts. We all have the thoughts. It's what you do with them. And it's not about even stopping the thoughts, because that even feeds it.
Well, I think it's just with the awareness that you said.
Yeah.
Like writing those down. Like I know when I first went through an exercise like that, I was actually working with Steve Hardison, and he gave me an assignment, and I was like, I'm a pretty optimistic person. Like, I don't know what we're going to find.
Yeah. Right.
And whoa.
Yeah. It turns out.
I had a big discovery there.
Yeah.
But once it was like, you know, I looked out the same window for so long. And now that I had the awareness of that, I looked out that same window and there's like things I never saw there before, right? Like more detailed, vibrant colors. Like it was just like, I see how this is playing, and I'm super passionate about it now, because it was just, that was life-changing for me. That was really a shift in that awareness of being and being intentional of who I'm being in the world, like working with him.
And letting go of the judgments of who you are not being.
Oh, yeah.
There are a lot of things that you could be, that you're not being. And then we judge ourselves around not being those things. And that's the biggest opportunity for growth, is to not judge it, but to look at ways to start creating that way of being in your life. To perceive. And let me just kind of give a definition of how I mean that when I say being, for those that might be watching, is just, it's your perception of the world. It's your beliefs around the world and how it works. And then from those beliefs, you're going to make your choices. And so that way of being, that perception can always change. So,
yeah. And even with my girls, I mean, I know they're 7 right now, but since it's been over a year, they have statements that we run through, because I'm like pre-programming them, right? And they're going to come out however they come out. Like I get that. They're going to have their own challenges. And so it's more of like, hopefully they'll have some kind of subset tool that they can believe into and have that as a starting point. So
I want to give you some research around that, because up until the age of 25, the prefrontal cortex is developing. And so in children, it's not fully developed until the age of 25. So parents are the surrogates of their children. So if there's neglect or abuse with those children, they're not going to develop those things, because the parents, who are the brain of that child, basically, until they're old enough to develop their own, wasn't present. And it's not that it's a faulting of the parents in any way. It's just like what you're doing is you're giving your daughters a loading of the frontal cortex, so that when they go through life, they have a foundation that you've established with them as their surrogate, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Fingers crossed, you know.
Yeah, right. I try with my kids too, and you think, man, it's not working, but then they do things and I see, wow, it is working. Yeah. And it's not that I need them to be me. That's not the goal of it. It's just to lay a foundation of what's possible for them.
Yeah, because then they start acknowledging one another, and they're like, "You're being they're like, Mom, can you give Adelina points for being a loving sister?" You know, like they want somehow to be able to acknowledge what they're seeing, what they see in themselves is they're also seeing that in one another, and it's beautiful. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. I just hear so much of what shows up in Abigail's world stems purely, like you said, presence earlier. When you're being something, you have this presence. And presence is kind of what radiates out from somebody. So in a community, you might not have referrals, but you have a presence. It radiates out that if you go to this company, you're going to have a great experience. That's what's radiating. That's the presence, because there are presences that are not that. They're the opposite of that. And so your way of being indicates your presence, and your presence can be positive or negative, or useful or unuseful.
Mm-hmm.
And you've chosen to make your presence very useful, very loving, very validating, very value-based. Your employees feel it. I would imagine working for you would be phenomenal.
Yeah, are you hiring?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are you
What are you
Where do I
gonna-
sign up? Yeah.
I know nothing about anything, but I'm a willing participant.
Yeah.
Teachable.
So I would wonder, what else comes up for you? We're already 55 minutes in, and I know there's a wealth of information in you. But if you were to, let me ask you this question. If you were to give yourself a piece of wisdom to carry back in time to when you were beginning this whole journey, what piece of wisdom would you have shared?
Oh gosh. Well, I think about that. I know what comes to mind right enough is you are enough. You are enough. Self-love. You're enough. Nothing to prove, nothing to whatever, right? So you can see that still hits a chord. And at the same time, she got me here, right? So that was my journey.
Yeah. She got me here. He got me here. They got me here. That person that we used to be got us here. Wow. I look at some of the decisions that I made when I was younger, my younger version, right? I'm like, what were you thinking? Yeah. But those decisions led to this being that I am today. Because I learned in that things I don't want, Yeah. And so, she got you here. Wow.
So much gratitude for our former selves, right? That's, if you can step back and give yourself that grace and that love of who you were and now who you be because of that person. Yeah. That's incredible.
And then you can carry that out and extend it out to others, right? Like everything is life is just a big learning experience. Like everybody, there's at some level, there's good and bad, but like everybody has a story. Everybody has something, right? And it's like, what are we doing to ourselves behind the scenes with the not enough and the just how many people I help with that? It's incredible. And so, so it's just, that would be it. Like whoever it is, even right now, I know I'm going to be different in 7 years. It's enough. It is what it is.
It is enough. It always enough. What else do you want to share today?
Let's see.
Anything.
I think that just what we've talked about today, like really like why I love the Giants and the Smalls book so much is just, it goes through that whole journey, right? There's so much stuff that resonated with my own experience and like being able to look and now being able to go back and help others. So I want to say thank you for writing. I mean, we read this quite frequently, the girls and I, and they even bring it up on their own. So I want to thank you for the difference that you're making and the aspirations that you have with what you're creating.
You're welcome. And thank you for that. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So that journey that you took is the same journey. Every interview we do is that journey.
Yeah. And we didn't even just do it in business. We did it in family too. Like, what we had to do to get triplets, like IVF, like that's a whole challenge in itself. And that was a whole mind roller coaster.
Yeah.
So that's where I go back to, and I'm like, everyone has their journey and it's life. That's all. It's life. And how do we support one another or at least be first and foremost supporting ourselves?
Thank you, Karen. One thing that I think of is we go through the journey and we feel giant in one area, and then we go start something brand new and we feel small again. And we go back through that journey all over again in all these areas. It's somebody says climbing mountains without tops. And so that's what we're doing is the Giants journey. It's not about where you're giant, it's where you're not, that there's the biggest opportunity. And even in your life, Abigail, with what you've created, there are places in your life where you are not giant. And there's an opportunity. It's not a shameful thing or a judgment thing. It's just purely, wow, what else am I capable of?
Yeah.
Because the journey never ends.
No.
Here you hit that pinnacle, right? Like you're successful in what you're doing now, but do you have more visions and goals and dreams of where you want to go from here, or did that just you've made it?
No.
That was a loaded question. I already knew the answer.
Yeah.
That's where I transition.
If you would have said, "Yeah, no, we're there," I would have been like, "Oh, that backfired."
I'm just gonna go on vacation now.
Yeah,
right.
Done.
No. I mean, the last, even this trip, right? Like, it was like, how do I create space? How do I transition out? So I'm really transitioning into a much higher level of leadership role within the company, and taking on now this journey of coaching women. And it's so interesting because for much of my life, I was in male fields or male areas, and not that I'm leaving them, but I know the point where it was like, oh, I'm not really in this. Like, when I was pregnant, it was kind of like, you're no longer one of us, if you will. But I don't know how to explain that anymore. But there was, like, when I was little, it was kind of like, it was an outcasting of young girls, and for being confident, and for and that was turned into reframed for them of, like, because I was taught, you say thank you. So if somebody pays you a compliment, you say thank you. And so then it was turned into, oh, she's conceited, she's this, she's whatever, things like that. And that really, like, hit me. And it's kind of like, rather than, like, fight that, I just was like, cool, like, I already with the guys anyway, I was in math, science, all the, it was a lot of, and so I just went down that field. So it's very interesting for me to come back full circle. And I had been helping women throughout my entire career, and it wasn't like an intentional of one or the other, but I just feel called with the work I'm doing now to continue to serve powerful women leaders, and really stepping into their complete power. And so, and I call it accessing and living into their badassness. And it's not from like a real, like, aggressive approach. It's like an alter ego inside, that you can be so solid that it doesn't matter what's going on in the world out there, that you can pull that forward and support, and, like, just be whatever it is that they're wanting to be. And so that's where I'm now. And so building a company, and then now going and redoing, like, going back to the starting levels, it's a different process, right? It's like, okay, where am I going to find these clients that were already, I really believe we're already on a path, right? Like, there's somewhere that we're already set to meet when we're set to meet. And so that's the exciting part of it.
Yeah. If you'll keep that quote up, look at that. That's beautiful right there. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can.
Yes.
And leave the rest to the universe, basically, is what I would say, is let the universe fill in the gaps, because you're not going to see it all.
I love the evolution of us as humans and where we're going, and the things that you're doing to break through barriers and to rise up bigger into your badassness. I love that. And then helping others, and like, looking back behind you and saying, okay, how can I help and assist and support that person going through their giant journey? You can't do it for them, but the cool thing is, as a giant in that area, you can turn around and say, hey, do this, watch out for this pitfall. You've got it in you. Build some inspiration, and breathe some life into people when they feel like giving up, saying, look, you know what, you're doing the thing, you're doing the right thing. Just keep going. That's going to help you grow. Going through this hard stuff is going to be the thing that helps you grow into it and be able to make it so where you look back at it, you're like, that used to stop us. It's barely a speed bump. Like, we barely even noticed, like, what just happened? I don't know. We just kept going. We're good. And I love what you're doing. I'm so inspired by you. And I'm grateful for you teaching us today, and for all those that are going to be able to be inspired and learn from your message, because I know it's going to be thousands and thousands and thousands, if not millions, of people that are going to be able to be inspired by you. So thank you so much for being you.
How do we promote you? Do you have a website that they can go to, email? How should they connect with you about your programs?
Yeah, so I do almost daily content writing on Facebook. It's Abigail Olaya, and my website is abigailolaya.com. So that's my first name, and then Olaya. And if they want to email me, it's abigail@abigailolaya.com. So,
okay, easy enough.
A lot of Abigail and Abigail.
Yeah. Abigail. Say that a million times. That's hard. This is perfect. I really love the journey that you took. It's inspiring to me. You know, I go through phases where I feel like a giant, days where I feel small, and it all depends on what I'm in. So it's you know, in areas where I might not feel like I've developed that capacity yet is the big word there. And so what you've described here is just a way of being, and let that way of being guide you, because when you come from there, rather than trying to get somewhere, it seems to fall in place the way that it should. And I think too many of us push so hard to just try to get somewhere. And so that I love that. That's a fresh perspective for me, and I'm grateful for that. So anything else on your mind?
No, just thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Yeah, cool. We love you. We're grateful for you. Thank you for your girls reading that book too. That's awesome. And you've given it as a gift to some powerful people around the world, and I'm so thankful for that. So cool. Okay, Ryan, any other thoughts?
No, just go make it a giant day.
Awesome.
Okay, guys, we'll see you in the next video. Take care.
Love you too.